الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على أفضلهم وخاتم النبيين محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ونزلنا عليك الكتاب تبيانا لكل شيء وهدى ورحمة وبشرى للمسلمين صدق الله العظيم. Surah An-Nahl of the Quran, Surah number 16. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares, and we sent down on thee, O Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, sent down the book, that it might explain all things, and therefore that it might also explain history in the historical process, history that is past, history that is now being made, and that which is to come. And in this book there is guidance. That explanation and that guidance have come as rahmah, divine mercy. And for those who have the good sense and the wisdom to go to the book with humility and devotion and dedication, and to search, even if it takes a lifetime, search for that explanation, search for that guidance. And then when they receive it, accept it and live it and struggle that it might prevail over all rivals and all falsehood. Bushra lahum. Good news and glad tidings for such people. They will understand what others cannot, and they will succeed when others will not. Respected Deputy Chancellor of the USM, University Science Malaysia here in the island of Penang, the President of the Penang Muslim League, the President or Chairman of the Yayasan Restu, Chairman of the Islamic Propagation Society of Penang International, and other organizers, brothers and sisters and students, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And let me not forget the distinguished scholar of Islam who is sitting in the front, our distinguished Sheikh, Hosein. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What is Islamic eschatology and how important is it? Unfortunately, the answer is there before us, and we are all aware of it, and so my task is so easy tonight. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam had performed the farewell Hajj, and then Allah had sent down revelation in which he said, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم اليوم Akmaltu lakum deenakum. This day have we perfected for you your deen. So Washington can say what they want. It doesn't bother us. وَأَتْمَمْتُ عَلَيْكُمْ نِعْمَتِي. And we have completed our favor unto you. وَرَضِيتُ لَكُمُ الْإِسْلَامَ دِينًا. And we have been pleased to ordain for you Islam as your way of life. We thought that it was all over now. And then the Prophet ﷺ returned to Medina. And he had just about 81 days left in his blessed life when this amazing event occurred, which introduces us to Islamic eschatology. When the stranger entered the masjid, dressed all in white, no one knew him. He was not a resident, nor could he have traveled from outside because there was no sign of travel on him. So this is a mystery. Did he drop out of the sky? And he walked straight to the Prophet ﷺ. No one stopped him. And he asked the 5 questions. And the Prophet ﷺ answered the questions. And he would then say, your answer is correct. But this is strange. We only ask a question to the Messenger of Allah when we do not know the answer. But he knows the answer. And then he left as mysteriously as he arrived. And then the Prophet ﷺ turned to Umar radiallahu ta'ala. Do you know who he was? And Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, Allah and his messenger know best. So that was Jibreel alayhi salam, the angel Gabriel, who came to instruct you on your deen after that revelation had come down. After. Why? There must be something of paramount importance that Allah should send Jibreel alayhi salam in this dramatic way. In this, to use another word that you are familiar with, in this unforgettable way. You'll never forget it. What is it in this visit that is so important? The first 3 questions pertain to the stages of growth. That when you have declared the faith, there is but one God, and there is no God beside him. And this head which bows in worship before the one God should not bow elsewhere, for that is an unforgivable sin. And that Muhammad, Allah's blessings be upon him, is the messenger of Allah. And that you should fast in Ramadan, pay the zakat, etc. And then what is faith? Iman, and it is in the heart. It is when belief travels and penetrates the heart that you have faith. And so religion is not meant to be left only on the lips. You know, you drive to work, you drive back home, you have nasi biryani for dinner, sit down and watch TV and go to sleep. And that's life. No. Religion is meant to be lived. And sometimes when you want to live the truth, you've got to pay a price for it. Sometimes when you want to live the truth, You got to pay a price for it, particularly in this age. But that's not the end of religion. There is a higher stage. And there are those in this gathering here tonight. I understand the hall has a capacity of 2,500 and you hardly have any seats that are vacant. We might have some 16 and 17 years old tonight. And so I speak to you tonight, if you are 16 and 17, that there is a higher stage of religion. When he was asked, what is al-ihsan? And he replied and said, أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَهُ, that you should worship Allah and serve Him as though you were seeing Him. But we can't see Him with these eyes. No. لَن تَرَانِي, he said to Musa alayhi salam. No, you cannot see me with these eyes. Well then, how can we see Allah? To worship Allah as though you're seeing Him. That is epistemology, the branch of knowledge which studies knowledge and how knowledge is acquired. And that is at the heart of eschatology. The modern world says that knowledge comes only from observation, from rational inquiry, from experimentation. But the Quran says no. The Quran says that there is external knowledge and there's also internal knowledge. That we have external eyes and we also have internal sight. Internal sight. I wish I could shout it out for those who still cannot hear, because they've been so secularized. Allah speaks in the Quran and He says, أَفَلَمْ يَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ, will they not travel to the earth? Perchance that by traveling the dead heart might come alive. فَتَكُونَ لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ يَعْقِلُونَ بِهَا أَوْ آذَانٌ يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا فَإِنَّهَا لا تعمى الأبصار ولكن تعمى القلوب التي في الصدور. It's not these eyes which are blind. No. What is blind is the heart which is inside the chest. And so we have a different epistemology. We have an epistemology which says the knowledge also comes internally. Unfortunately, that's not taught in universities, and I'm conscious that I am the guest of a university tonight. The highest stage of knowledge, of religion, the highest stage of religion, and every Christian will agree with me, and every Jew will agree with me, and every Hindu will agree with me, and every Buddhist will agree with me. The highest stage of religion is to be able to see with the internal eye, with the heart. And then came questions 4 and 5, which is eschatology. When will the last hour come? I see. History is not endless. There is going to be an end to history. What are the signs of the last hour? Alamat as-sa'ah. This is the subject matter of eschatology. You cannot study eschatology with simply a declaration of faith. You need more than that. You cannot study eschatology simply by living the faith with sincerity and devotion. You need more than that. To study eschatology, you have to reach to the highest level. That the heart must also see. And the heart can only see when there is nur in the heart. Nur or light. And nur is not sold in the stock market. يَهْدِ اللَّهُ لِنُورِهِ مَن يَشَاءُ. Allah guides to His nur whomsoever Allah chooses to guide. And just remember, if you're 16 or 17, that the sexual revolution has not come by accident. That sex is not available today like sunshine just by accident. No. The reason why we have universal zina around the world today is because when you walk the road of zina, your nur will go. And you have only darkness inside of you. This is Islamic eschatology. This is the importance of the subject. And now to turn to an Islamic eschatological explanation of modern Western civilization. It is a fascinating subject, but it could not have been attempted until this time. So if you cannot find books on Islamic eschatology, if you cannot find scholars of Islamic eschatology, please remember that this is a newly developing branch of knowledge which could not have developed until certain events had unfolded in the world. Amongst them, the liberation of the Holy Land for the Jews, the restoration of a state of Israel in the Holy Land, and the growth of that Israel today to become a superpower, and the anticipation of a Pax Judaica, as our chairman mentioned, a Pax Judaica seeking to replace Pax Americana, because you know, the United States is now in irreversible decline. Someone should tell that to our governments. The United States is now in irreversible decline. And we have some fascinating things to share with you tonight on the US dollar. On the US dollar. That in the same way that Pax Americana replaced Pax Britannica, so too Pax Judaica wants to replace Pax Americana. It is only when these events started to unfold in history that it became possible for us to understand some verses of the Quran and to understand some ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. But before we proceed now to the meat of the lecture, let us give a warning. Don't be too anxious to rush into the subject. Be careful. You need a versatile scholarship. You need proper methodology. And I have attempted in my book on an Islamic view of Gog and Magog in the modern world, there's a chapter here on methodology, which I studied and got from my teacher, Maulana Dr. Fadlur Rahman Ansari, rahimahullah. Proper methodology. If you go to my lectures on the internet, I've already explained that proper methodology. And you need to remain constantly studying the world around you. You don't just go to work and come back home and eat nasi biryani and go to sleep and hope that knowledge will come. No. If you're 16 or 17, you must prepare yourself for a lifetime of the pursuit of knowledge, to seek to understand the world around you, to seek to understand events which have passed, and then to be able to focus, for example, on the NATO summit which just occurred in Wales, ended yesterday, in which they have now branded Russia as the main enemy of NATO. Oh, that's stale news. We always knew that NATO was there for Russia. But they have PhDs in deception. And so now it's inevitable. The nuclear war is inevitable. If you are focusing your thought on the world around you, you are in a position to study Islamic eschatology. And finally, Allah has to bless you with nur. And Allah chooses whomsoever He blesses with nur. If your job is more important to you, if your promotion is more important to you, if your freedom to fly, so your name is not on a no-fly list, if that is more important to you than the truth, forget it. Go and eat durian in Penang. Forget it. You're not going anywhere until you have a backbone made of steel. And you can stand up. Stand up for the truth, regardless of the price you have to pay. They're going to say you're a terrorist. They're going to say, get rid of this man. Let them talk. Because if Allah blesses you with nur, and with that nur you penetrate the Quran, then you will rise in honor and respect in the world. And your name will live on, while they will remain less than footnotes on the pages of history. And so now let us go to the Quran to understand modern Western civilization. And I now have the impossible task of fitting in into 1 hour what should take about 4 or 5. So make dua for me. Allah speaks in the Quran in Surah Al-Rum. And if I have to cut corners, forgive me because of time. Allah speaks in the Quran in Surah Al-Rum about Rum. The word Rum occurs in the Quran only once. And He says, Alif Lam Mim, غُلِبَتِ الرُّوم. Rome has been defeated. في أدنى الأرض, in a land close by. Rome has been defeated in a land close by. Who is Rome? وَهُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ غَلَبِهِمْ سَيَغْلِبُونَ. But after their defeat, they're going to be victorious في بضع سنين, in just a few years' time. Who is Rome? Who has been defeated just before this verse of the Quran was revealed, and who will be victorious in just a few years after the revelation of this verse of the Quran? Was Washington around at that time? Was London and Paris around at that time? Was NATO around at that time? Where have their sense gone? These people who identify Rome with NATO. Have you no sense in your head? لله الأمر من قبل ومن بعد. Decision making, defeat and victory is with Allah. The previous occasion and the subsequent occasion. And on that day when Rome is victorious, وَيَوْمَئِذٍ يَفْرَحُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Muslims are going to celebrate. This is the Quran. Rome, of course, they can say what they want. Rome, of course, is Byzantium, Byzantine Christianity, which was based in Constantinople. And you would notice that your brother Imran always uses the word Constantinople. Mustafa Kamal can go and jump in the sea if he wants. It doesn't bother me. Why do I use the word Constantinople when Mustafa Kamal prohibited the use of the word Constantinople by law? In Turkey, the law is you cannot use the word Constantinople. The law. It doesn't affect me. Why? Because Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam used the word Constantinople. That's why. لَتَفْتَحَنَّ الْقُنْسْتَنْتِنِيَّةِ. You will most certainly conquer Constantinople. وَلَنِعْمَ الْأَمِيرُ آمِرُهَا وَلَنِعْمَ الْجَيْشُ ذَلِكَ الْجَيْشُ. You will most certainly conquer Constantinople. In Akhir Zaman, not 1452, that bogus one. You will most certainly conquer Constantinople. This is to come. So he used the word Constantinople, and therefore it is sunnah to use the word Constantinople. So Mustafa Kamal is not going to program Imran Hosein, not at all. Orthodox Christianity based in Constantinople, that was Rome. And the Quran spoke positively about Orthodox Christianity. And the Quran gave to us a relationship that was friendly, that we celebrated when Rome was victorious. We celebrated Surah Al-Rum. And I'll go to Surah Al-Ma'idah. And Allah speaks in Surah Al-Ma'idah and says that in time to come you're going to find something strange. لَتَجِدَنَّ. You will most certainly find in time to come أَشَدَّ النَّاسِ عَدَاوَةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الْيَهُودِ وَالَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا. You must not be afraid to quote the Quran. I remember I was at the State University of New York in Stony Brook just before 9/11. And I was lecturing. And the Jews were sitting right in front of me. And I quoted the hadith that on that day, the stones will speak and say, Muslim, there's a Jew hiding behind me. Come and kill him. And they went and they complained to the Vice Chancellor. So our response was, if in the great democracy of the United States we are not allowed to quote the Quran or the Hadith, please tell us so. That's the last we heard about it. Don't be afraid to quote the word of Allah. You will most certainly find in time to come that those who will have the greatest hatred and hostility and enmity for you would be the Jews. The Quran does not say all Jews, so you should not say all Jews. No, it's a general statement. It does not say all Jews, no. وَالَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا. And those who pursue the agenda of shirk, they will have the greatest hatred and hostility for you. Shall I introduce you to shirk? You're very quiet, huh? The one sin that Allah will not forgive is shirk. Revelation came down in Surah At-Tawbah, in which Allah took them to task for worshipping the priests and rabbis. And then the man came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, "O Messenger of Allah, but the Christians and the Jews don't worship their priests and rabbis. How could Allah say so?" To which the Prophet ﷺ replied and said, "Did they not make haram, halal what Allah made haram? That is their shirk. If you make haram what Allah made halal, that is shirk. If you make halal what Allah made haram, that is shirk. And if I follow you in it, I am in shirk as well." And so those who have the greatest hatred for you in their hearts will be those who are pursuing the agenda of shirk. Well, let me tell you what Allah made halal if you didn't know it. Are you aware that dinar is in the Quran, a gold coin? Are you aware that dirham is in the Quran, a silver coin? Are you aware that this is the money that your Lord and my Lord ordained that we should use? Are you aware that this is the money that the Prophet ﷺ used? Are you aware that this is the money that all of mankind used for all of time until modern Western civilization appeared on the stage of history? And then came the Bretton Woods Accord, which they don't teach in the Darul Uloom. And then came the International Monetary Fund with its Articles of Agreement, which prohibited the use of gold as money. Even Dr. Mahathir was not aware of that when a few years ago he attempted to bring back the gold dinar, at least in a limited scope. And may Allah bless him for that. May Allah bless him for that. I mean, nobody else attempted that. Nobody else dares to attempt to talk about gold dinar or to make an effort to bring back the gold dinar. Nobody else dares to do it. So they prohibited the use of gold as money, so that they're bogus. And when I use this language, remember, I'm not talking through my hat. I have studied my subject. Oh yes. I have studied monetary economics in 2 universities, and I've studied monetary economics in the Quran and Sunnah. When they prohibited the use of gold as money, they did that so that they're bogus and they're fraudulent and they're utterly haram paper, plastic and electronic money could replace Sunnah money. That is shirk. So, you will certainly find in time to come that those who will have the greatest hatred and enmity and hostility for you would be the Jews and those who pursue the agenda of shirk. And this is not their only shirk, there are other shirk as well. وَلَتَجِدَنَّ, and you will most certainly find in time to come أَقْرَبَهُمْ مَوَدَّةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّا Nasara. You will most certainly find in time to come that those who will have the greatest love and affection for you would be those who say, we are Christians. I went to Moscow last year on my first visit. And I was invited to speak on Islamic eschatology at the most famous university in Russia, the State University of Moscow. And if you are 17 years of age and you pursue this subject, one day you will also be honored like that. It is Allah who gives honor and Allah who dishonors. And I found that the Russian scholars of eschatology, received me with so much respect and affection. And they showed such respect and affection for Islam. This was Moscow. You think that could happen in the White House? Who are those Christians who in time to come will be the closest in love and affection for you? Who are those Christians? ذلك بأن منهم قسيسين ورهبان وأنهم لا يستكبرون. That's because amongst them they are priests and rabbis, and they are not priests and monks, and they are not given to arrogance. The most arrogant people on the face of the earth today are those who control power in modern Western civilization. And so who are these Christians? The answer from the Quran is immediate, clear. The Quran has spoken about Orthodox Christianity in a positive way, in a friendly way. And on that day when they are successful, they defeat the Persians, you Muslims are going to celebrate. And so we begin our process of an Islamic eschatological explanation of modern Western civilization by identifying Rome as true Christianity, Rome as the Christianity mentioned in the Quran as Nasara. But then sometime after the revelation of the Quran, a split occurred in Rome. And one part of Rome broke away and went to Italy, created the Vatican, and created someone you may have heard about him, Santa Claus. Western Christianity gave us the first time of history you have someone with a beard who has survived in the West. Santa Claus. And then Christianity in the West gives us Christmas on the 25th of December. But Eastern Christianity, they have a different day for celebrating Christmas. This one in the West launched the Crusades, the Pope. And when he launched the Crusades, he did it for two reasons. Number one, to take Constantinople. And number two, to take Jerusalem. So they're waging war on their own Christian people. So this was not a Christian war. No. Because European Christians were fighting against Byzantium to take Constantinople. And they did succeed. In the Third Crusade, I believe it was. And they conquered Constantinople, and there was a bloodbath. And they ruled over Constantinople for something like 80 years. They even conquered Jerusalem until Salahuddin Ayyubi came, and then he was able to recover it. And so the Crusades were not essentially Christian wars. If they were, how can you explain Christians fighting Christians? The Crusades rather were Western European Christian wars. Modern Western civilization came out of Western Christianity. This was an obsession with two things. An obsession with Constantinople. And that obsession was yesterday on display in Wales in the NATO summit with Russia. An obsession with Constantinople and an obsession with Jerusalem. But that was not all. Something strange happened. The Christians had accused the Jews of the greatest crime of all. They alleged that the Jews were responsible for the crucifixion of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, and they said that Nabi Isa alayhi salam is God, so this is deicide, to kill God himself. And so there was tremendous hatred on the part of Christians for Jews. Great hatred for what had happened in the crucifixion. But lo and behold, very strangely, very mysteriously, Western Christianity now reconciles with the Jews and build Jewish friendship, Jewish-Christian friendship, and the Judeo-Christian alliance comes into being. That Judeo-Christian alliance eventually gave to the world the Zionist Judeo-Christian alliance. Does the Quran have anything to say about that Christian world? Does the Quran have anything to say about that reconciliation and alliance between Christians and Jews? You would be surprised if you would take a little time to study the Quran, how the Quran explains the world today. It is in Surah Al-Ma'idah. And remember, proper methodology. Don't ever take a verse of the Quran in isolation. No. You have to go to the totality of the book. Allah says, He gives a command. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have faith in Allah. La tattakhidhu al-yahuda wal-nasara awliya. Do not take the Jews and do not take the Christians as your friends and allies. We have Christians, I'm sure, in this gathering here today, because there are Christians in Penang. Do not take the Jews and do not take the Christians as your friends and allies. Is Allah speaking about all Jews? Is Allah speaking about all Christians? Will you adopt the lazy schoolboy methodology, believing that Allah is speaking about all Jews and all Christians? No, He could not. Because other verses of the Quran make it plain and clear. He could not. Well then, which Jews and which Christians is He talking about? Don't take them as your friends and allies. Which Jews and which Christians? The answer is to be found in the words which follow. بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. Do not take such Jews and do not take such Christians as your friends and allies, who themselves are friends and allies of each other. The Quran is anticipating, if you will allow that language, the emergence of a Judeo-Christian alliance. And when that Judeo-Christian alliance emerges in history, then you are commanded by your Lord, and you will have to answer in the grave if you disobey Him. You are commanded by your Lord, do not be friends and allies of that Jewish-Christian alliance. وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. Whosoever from amongst you turn to them with friendship and alliance, you now belong to them. You've lost your Islam. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Surely Allah will not provide guidance for a people who are wicked. That Judeo-Christian alliance has a trademark. Its trademark is becoming more and more apparent every day that passes by. Previously it was concealed. And then it emerged with the scientific and technological revolution, which gave them power, military power. A mysterious scientific and technological revolution, and there's nothing which predates it which can explain it. Why is it that Western Europe and not Eastern Europe? Why? Why only Europe? A mysterious scientific and technological revolution gives to Europe military power unprecedented in history. And then they use that power in a wicked way. They don't use power to punish the oppressor and to seek to bring relief to the oppressed. No, they are not Zulkarnain. No. They use power to oppress. And they use power against the most defenseless people of all. To persecute, to terrorize, to take from the poor the little that they have. A people with no heart, no sympathy. Wickedness. Surely Allah does not provide guidance for a wicked people. This is one of the reasons why your brother Imran does not put his foot in any territory which is a member state of NATO. That's my choice. You can make your choice. This is Surah Al-Ma'idah. Allah speaks positively about that Christian world. وَيَوْمَئِذٍ يَفْرَحُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Byzantium, Orthodox Christianity. And Russia today is the head of Orthodox Christianity. And Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam said about Akhirul Zaman, that in Akhirul Zaman we are going to make an alliance with Rome. We Muslims. Today, unfortunately, it's only Shia Islam which is making that alliance. And Sunni Islam is either eating Teh Tarik and drinking, eating roti canai and drinking Teh Tarik somewhere, or fall asleep. That's Sunni Islam. That's Sunni Islamic scholarship. And Allah speaks about this Christian world, which enters into an alliance with Judaism, a Jewish-Christian alliance. And Allah prohibits us from being friends and allies of these people. This is the foundation of an Islamic eschatological explanation of modern Western civilization. Modern Western civilization did not only use power to terrorize the world, waging war all over the world, conquering territories, colonizing them at the point of a bloody sword, including the Malay Peninsula. Innocent people. We didn't do them anything. Yet they came with their armies and they colonized. And when they colonized, they came with an arrogance that they are a superior people and we are the natives. And we must give up our way of dress. And we must dress like them. We must give up our language and we must speak their language. We must give up our roti canai and eat the Kentucky Fried Chicken. We must live the way they live. And then we'll be civilized. That is the arrogance they came with. A racial arrogance. A cultural arrogance. It was the white man's burden to civilize the non-white people. It's called jingoism. And we had enough of it. And then, when they ruled over us, they did something even more mysterious. They didn't come to rule over us simply to rip us off and to take all that they can take, suck all the wealth that they could get. No, they had another agenda. They came with an agenda to destroy all our institutions, political and economic, educational, social, religious, and replace them with institutions made in Europe. They even took away our money and replaced it with their bogus money. And then they mysteriously decolonized while we were drinking Teh Tarik, of course. They decolonized. But when they decolonized, they left in place institutions that they could continue the process of transforming us into carbon copies of themselves, to such an extent that we eventually became intellectual carbon copies of them. We suffered the intellectual colonization. Our people went to Oxford and Cambridge and the Sorbonne and Harvard and Yale and Princeton and Columbia and came back armed with degrees. And these are now the intellectual elite. And they're now secularized in their mind and their thinking. And the Quran is blocked for them. These are the ones who now will rule on behalf of the colonial master who is now gone back to London and to Washington. They came with an agenda to rule the world. Why do they want to rule the world? Even Russia must now submit to them, but thank Allah for Putin. Thank Allah for Russia, which knows no fear of them. And Russia is now paying them back beautifully with their own coins. And I love it. They're being taught a lesson that they should have been taught a long time ago. And Imran Hosein is proud of what Russia did in Crimea. Governments could vote if they wanted the United Nations. It doesn't bother me. Because Islamic eschatology gives us a different way of looking at it. They came with an agenda to rule the world. That their civilization is now the supreme, the best that history has ever produced and will ever see. If you go to your library, look for Arnold Toynbee, British historian. Look for a book entitled Civilization on Trial. I'm talking to you if you're 17 years of age. When I was 12, my father had books on Islamic philosophy in his library, and at 12 I was reading his books, so there's no excuse for you. Civilization on Trial, written by Arnold Toynbee. I think it was published in the 1940s. It's a classic. And you'll see in that book where the British historian says it very plainly, that modern Western civilization emerged as the chosen of the Lord Most High. We are the chosen people. We have to rule the world. The rest of mankind are like cockroaches. Why do they want to rule the world? They now colonize, and then they decolonize, and they give us now the modern state. And the modern state has to be dressed up in a jacket and tie and introduced to the United Nations Organization. And the United Nations Organization has a Security Council. And in the Security Council, they got the veto. They got the veto. So it's a world government. And they're ruling the world. And then they gave us an economy which is now linked all around the world. There's no such thing as an isolated economy anymore. And the linkages of the economy around the world is called the world economy through the banking system. They gave us the bank. We never had banks before. No. They gave us the banking system. And the banking system is based on something called riba. And if you don't know it, riba is haram. Allah has made riba haram. But tonight is not the time for us to talk so much on that subject of riba. And through the banking system, they seek to control the economy around the world. And then they gave us the monetary system. And before we end the talk tonight, we've got to speak some more about the monetary system. Why do they want to rule the world? Modern Western civilization. How do we explain the emergence of a ruling state? Britain. A little island off the coast of Europe. Never played any special role in history. Then suddenly Oliver Cromwell comes along with an alliance with Jews to pursue a Jewish agenda for the state of Israel to be restored in the Holy Land. Oliver Cromwell. And then Britain becomes the naval power par excellence of the world. And Britain controls every single naval port in the world that is of strategic importance, including Singapore. And Pax Britannica emerges. But Britain has a mysterious relationship with the Holy Land, starting from Oliver Cromwell. And then the Balfour Declaration, that it is the intention of the British government to work for the establishment of a Jewish national home in the Holy Land. And then Britain acts as a midwife for Israel to be born. And then comes the period between the First and the Second World War, when a new actor emerges, the United States of America, to replace Britain. And Pax Americana comes along with the same obsession with the Holy Land and Israel. Are all these things happening by accident? Will you not think? Did the Quran not come لِقَوْمِ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ, to a people who would think? Did Allah not send the Quran لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ? Did He not send it down to a people who would not only think, but think things out? There is an explanation. There is an Islamic eschatological explanation for this obsession of Western Christianity in its alliance with Judaism and modern Western civilization. Russia is not a part of Western civilization. Its obsession to rule the world. And the explanation is in Dajjal. Yes, it's a messianic explanation. The Christians here who in this gathering would know about the Antichrist. Did the Prophet not say, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, that when Antichrist or Dajjal is released, he will live on earth for 40 days. Yawmun kasana, a day which will be like a year. Not a day which is a year. A day which is like a year. Yawmun kashahr, a day which would be like a month. Yawmun kajum'a, a day which would be like a week. Wasairu ayamihi ka'ayamikum, and all his days, meaning all the rest of his days, like your days. Meaning that when Dajjal is released on earth, he has to pass through 3 different stages in which he will be in 3 different dimensions of time here on earth. Are there angels in this room, in this auditorium, apart of course from your wife? Are there angels in this? Some of you falling asleep, I see. Are there angels in this auditorium? Of course there are angels. Can you see them? No. Why? Because they're not in our world of space and time. Are there jinn in this auditorium? You know, there are a lot of them in Washington. Yes, there are jinn here. But we can't see them. They're not in our world of space and time. So Dajjal is here, but not in our world of space and time. But he's here. He's working. He's operating. I'm fond of saying that I think some of the women are going to be annoyed with me now. Dajjal is a mastermind in deception. I am 72 years of age. I spent my entire life in the pursuit of knowledge. So I'm not speaking these words absent-mindedly. Allah created men to have several wives. Dajjal did an absolutely magnificent job in brainwashing the women of the world, who in turn brainwashed the men. The decent men, respectable men, men who are models of conduct, are men who have only one wife. You don't mind if you have a Monica on the side, like Bill Clinton, but you must have only one wife. Dajjal is a mastermind in brainwashing people. You'll be surprised how many of us are brainwashed. When he's released, he'll live on earth for 40 days, and he goes through these 3 stages. I came to the conclusion, and you have to go to this book now, Jerusalem in the Quran, for the rest of the story, that when he was released on the island of Britain. And that explains Pax Britannica. And so Pax Britannica represents a day, Pax Britannica is located within a day which is like a year. Don't come and tell me Britain ruled the world for 1,000 years. No, take that nonsense and throw it away. Pax Britannica is located within a day which is like a year. It's not the only thing. And then came Pax Americana, which is now a day which is like a month. And since the United States is now in irreversible decline, we can now anticipate that a day which is like a week is about to commence. So we had a first ruling state, and then we had a second ruling state, and they all belong to Western civilization. Dajjal is in control. So when the United States is no longer a ruling state, and that will come when the US dollar dies. When will it die? We can't end the lecture before we turn to that subject. Remind me. There is going to be a third ruling state. And at the end of that day, which is like a week, it is at that time that Dajjal will appear in person. But before a day which is like a week can commence, we must first identify which will be that third ruling state. This book was written 12 years ago. And we said, and remember, when we give an opinion, do not accept our opinion unless you are convinced that it is correct. We said Israel wants to rule the world. And so Pax Judaica. The world of Islamic scholarship probably never heard about Imran Hosein. Or if they did hear about him, they didn't consider this to be important, so they have not responded to me. And they have not responded to Jerusalem in the Quran for 12 years, and I don't expect them to respond. Before Israel is small. Before Israel can rule the world, something has to happen to make the world smaller. That's the Malhama. The Prophet spoke about the Malhama. The Christians call it Armageddon. That Malhama is now around the corner. Notice what NATO just did yesterday, branding Russia as the main enemy. So the Malhama is going to be nuclear war. Nuclear war is going to produce all those mushroom clouds, thousands of nuclear weapons exploding. Russia got thousands of her own. And she's going to lose them. She's going to lay off all of them. All of them. When those mushroom clouds come out from the nuclear weapons explosions, my understanding is that is the Dukhan. Remember the 10 signs of the last day? What are they? The 10 major signs. Number 1, Dajjal. Number 2, Gog and Magog. Number 3, the return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam. Number 4, Dukhan, smoke. Number 5, Dabbatul Ard, the beast of the earth. Number 6, that the sun will rise from the west. Number 7, 8, and 9, 3 earthquakes in which the earth sinks down and swallows what it swallows. 1 in the east, and 1 in the west, and 1 in Arabia. And number 10, that the fire will come out of Yemen and drive people to their place of assembly. So that one, the smoke, Dukhan, my opinion is that this is the Dukhan, the mushroom clouds from the nuclear explosions which are coming. Who will die when that nuclear war takes place, and who will live? I'm sure you want to know. It is only after that Malhama that Israel can rule the world, not before. And now I want to turn to a hadith. We have 2 more hadiths and we'll end. Back to the monetary system. That's at the heart of the effort to rule the world. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, about Akhir Zaman, that the river Euphrates, Furat, will uncover a mountain of gold. Listen carefully, and people will fight for that gold. And 99 out of every 100 would be killed. So this is not conventional warfare. This looks like nuclear warfare. But everyone will say, I will be the one who will survive. And Muslims at that time should not touch that gold. Proper methodology is that we should recognize that this is religious symbolism. But if my Salafi critics insist on waiting for a mountain of the metal to come out from the river, that's their choice. We say no. The mountain stands or symbolizes a very large quantity. And the mountain of gold symbolizes something underneath the river in a large quantity, which is one day destined to function as gold. And that's oil, black gold. And because it is a mountain, it's going to go up, reach a peak, and then come back down. Oil and gas. Reach a peak, and then come back down. So when it's coming back down, they're going to be fighting. Fighting for it. When did oil begin to function as gold? Have the scholars of Islam ever bothered to ask that question? Up to 1971, gold still played a role in the monetary system which came out of the IMF. But in 1971, largely because of Charles de Gaulle, France kept on plugging away in attacking this unjust monetary system which came out of Bretton Woods and the IMF, and we don't have the time tonight to explain it. And eventually, when the French demanded that US dollars be redeemed for gold at $35 an ounce, kept on doing it, then in September 71, the Americans had enough. The Vietnam War had broken the bank. And Richard Nixon retired to Camp David and then on Sunday declared, well, we gave our word that the monetary system will be based on gold and that all US dollars will be redeemable for gold at $35 an ounce. We gave our word, but we don't have to keep our word. After all, we're Americans. And so the United States reneged on its obligations under international law. And from September 1971, the US dollar was in no man's land. And if de Gaulle was still alive, he probably could have given it a blow that could have caused it to collapse. But de Gaulle had died. From 71 to 73, they planned. In 73, they had the Arab-Israeli war, and they were on both sides of the war. And they caused the war to go to a draw. And during the war, they knew that Faisal is going to impose an oil boycott. They knew that, and they wanted it to happen. And when the oil boycott emerged in the war, what happened to the price of gold, price of oil? The price of oil rose by 400%, from $3 a barrel to $12. And the US dollar collapsed by 400%, from $40 for an ounce of gold to $160 to an ounce of gold. And the Arab oil producing countries were just raking in the money. And then Kissinger made his most brilliant diplomatic move ever when he went to Faisal, and he made a deal with Faisal, rahimahullah, that if you would commit yourself to sell oil for only US dollars, nothing else but US dollars, I tell you that the money you're now getting is peanuts from what you're going to be getting in the future. And Kissinger was right. The money just kept on coming in, because now the US, a barrel of oil going for 60, 70, 80, 90, $100 a barrel. But it was an unjust situation, that oil can be sold for only US dollars. Oil is the largest commodity traded in the world market. And so you created a permanent demand for US dollars. And so now the US dollar is no longer backed by gold. It is backed by oil. So it has become a petrodollar. So the mountain of gold has appeared. The ocean of oil is now functioning as a mountain of gold, with the petrodollar emerging in 1973. So what about the people fighting over it? And 99 out of every 100 would be killed. Answer? They're going to fight for the preservation of the monetary system. That's what the fight is going to be about. And the biggest challenge to the monetary system has come from Russia. It was a Russian initiative to reach out to China and to India and to Brazil and to South Africa to create BRICS. While we in the world of Islam were drinking our tea tariq as usual. This is Islamic scholarship today. This is the pathetic state of Islamic scholarship today. Yesterday we used to have scholars. I don't know where they are today. I don't know. The biggest challenge to the monetary system has now come from Russia, the BRICS. And so what they're doing in Ukraine is fishing for an excuse to attack Russia and to force Russia into submission so that the mountain of gold can be survived. So the malhama, I realized, the malhama is actually going to be a war for the preservation of the petrodollar monetary system. If they're going to fight over the mountain of gold, who will die? Answer: the two adversaries. It's going to be the NATO countries versus Russia and her allies. So where are the nuclear weapons going to land? You can say goodbye to North America. And you can say goodbye to the whole of Western Europe when the malhama occurs. Nobody's going to live there anymore. Western civilization will be gone. Russia will destroy. But you can't destroy Russia, because when you destroy Western Russia, you have the whole of Asian Russia still there. The whole of Asian Russia is still there. After the malhama, said the Prophet ﷺ, and of course I expect the malhama perhaps within the next 10 years or so. After the malhama, the next important event will be the conquest of Constantinople. Turkish Muslims don't like me at all. If I go to Turkey, they probably arrest me. Because for 500 years, the Ottoman Empire fostered this lie, this bogus statement, that the conquest of Constantinople in 1452 by Sultan Muhammad Fateh was the fulfillment of the prophecy of the Prophet Muhammad. That's false. The malhama is still to come. And the conquest of Constantinople comes after the malhama. What is there important about Constantinople? That a Muslim army should want to conquer Constantinople after the malhama? Answer: there's only one military significance of Constantinople, and that is the Bosphorus. That's all. That's all. And the Bosphorus is important for only one naval power, and that's Russia. The Russian naval fleet in Crimea. And so we've come to the conclusion that Russia will survive the malhama. NATO, you can put that in your pipe and smoke it. This is our gift to you from Islamic Eschatology. Well then, if the monetary system does not collapse with the malhama, if after the malhama a day like a week commences, and the Zionists in Israel are now able to rule the world because Western civilization and Russia are no longer there. Western Europe, Russia. Well then, how will the monetary system collapse? Because that is the heart of their power. Not the military, it's the monetary system. That is the heart of their power. Let me quote one more hadith and then we'll be finished. You'll be surprised how much there is to find, you can find in the Quran and in the hadith. You'll be surprised. The Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, about akhirul zaman, that the earth will vomit from its liver columns of gold and silver. I read the hadith about 20 years ago. I put it in one of my books. Well, I never understood it. What is this vomiting? How can the earth vomit? Until I went to Jakarta last month for a retreat on the Muslim village. And one of the participants in the retreat mentioned that in Java, you can't prevent people from digging from gold because there's gold all over. And the gold comes out from the volcanoes. Oh, Imran Hosein, oh, that is it. It clicked for me. That's the vomiting that in Akhirul Zaman, volcanoes are going to erupt and columns of gold and silver are going to come out. It is when that avalanche of gold and silver appears that that's goodbye for Israeli and Zionist rule over the world of money. Where will it occur? Obviously, it has to be in Indonesia. They tell me they have something called a ring of fire. Active volcanoes from Sumatra all the way down. And you already have gold coming out in small quantities. And so Akhirul Zaman is going to witness a huge avalanche of gold coming out from these volcanoes. Whether Lee Kuan Yew likes it or he doesn't like it makes no difference. The gold is going to come out. And when that gold comes out, that will be the end of their control over money. I wish we could spend some more time on the subject, but I've taken too much time already. What I've done tonight, by Allah's kindness and grace, is to share with you a method of using the Quran and using the Ahadith to explain the world today, and in particular, to explain the phenomenon of modern Western civilization. To warn you of Allah's command, don't take them as your friends and allies. And so we have to find a way and means to return to dinar and dirham as money. I hope and pray that tonight in this hall somebody, some group of you might be touched in your hearts, and somewhere and somehow in Malaysia we can establish an institution to teach Islamic eschatology, outside of a university, however. If we can do that, if we can establish an institute of Islamic eschatology here in Malaysia, I tell you, you'll be surprised. There'll be people coming from all over the world to study Islamic eschatology, because this is the most important branch of knowledge in the world today. May Allah bless all those who now return to the Quran with humility, with dedication, with faith, with tears in your eyes and tears in your heart, to struggle for the knowledge and guidance and explanation which is in the Quran, and then to apply that in the world today. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ وَتُبْ عَلَيْنَا يَا مَوْلَانَا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ بِرَحْمَتِكَ يَا أَرْحَمَ الرَّاحِمِينَ. آمين.
Assalamualaikum and very good evening to everyone. My name is Hosein. I'm a student from USM, from the Faculty of Computer Science. I would like to ask a question on the allies between the Jews and the Christianity. In our context, for a teenager like myself and the students here, I think we are all very free and we are not tied anymore to our parents and families. So we are very free to explore the world and we want to be very independent, at least for myself. So, for example, I have a very high ambition on exploring the world, on going to Europe and stuff like that. So, if one day I would go there and be a student in one of the universities there, how would I identify these allies between the Jews and the Christians? Could you give some advice on that? Thank you.
You don't need to travel to Washington and to London to study the subject. No. You can do the studies right here in Malaysia or any other part of the world. It's just a matter of research. Simple, it's elementary research. You will see, for example, the relationship between Britain and the State of Israel, the relationship between the United States and the State of Israel. And in these two alone, Britain and Israel, United States and Israel, you will see the link between the two. Then look at the Christians, fundamentalist Christians in the United States, for example, and their support for the State of Israel. They call themselves Christian Zionists, and you have others who are called Jewish Zionists. And the Christian Zionists and the Jewish Zionists form themselves as friends and allies. This is elementary research. You don't have to go to Washington to do this research at all. The more important thing for you to decide upon is the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, when you see something which is evil, you must change it with your hand. And if you cannot, then change it with your tongue. And if you cannot, then change it with your heart. But that is the weakest form of faith. You go to study at Columbia University in Manhattan. Famous university. Jewish control, Zionist control. And the United States government and its supporters are waging war on your people. Unjust war. There are three kinds of lies. There are simple lies, there are monumental lies, and then there's 9/11. And they blame 9/11 on us, Muslims and Arabs. And you know it's a lie. It's false. The evidence is already there. Most Americans believe the American government is lying on 9/11. But you go and you remain in the United States. In order to do your studies there, you got to keep your mouth shut. Because if you stand up and say 9/11 was not done by Muslims, no, that's the Israeli Mossad. Would you be able to continue your studies? No. Your name will probably be on a no-fly list. So in order to be able to pursue your studies in the United States, you've got to put your tail between your legs and keep your mouth shut. There's no integrity in that. Now, had I remained, I had a US green card. I left the United States 2 weeks after 9/11. I had a very high profile in New York. And my profile was rising over the United States. I left the United States 2 weeks after 9/11. I never put my foot in that country again. Why? Not because I did not benefit from my stay in the United States. I benefited tremendously. I learned a lot while I lived in the United States. But I knew that I would not have the freedom anymore. And for me it was more important to be in a place like Malaysia. And the government of Malaysia has never even once placed any obstacles in my path. Preaching Islam and teaching Islam. Never once in the 22 years I've been visiting this country. But if I were to preach Islam the way I do, would I survive in the United States? There's something called integrity. There are things in life that money cannot buy. One of them is integrity. So you've got to choose whether you want to get the university education in the United States and keep your mouth shut, or you prefer integrity and to stand up and call a spade a spade. The choice is yours.
Assalamu alaikum to everyone. My name is Imran. I am from the School of Social Science. I would like to ask a question regarding the Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, aka Putin.
President. Russian president.
Yes. What did he actually do to cause a serious backlash to Western policies? I just need some highlighted examples. Thank you.
Please go and do some research on something called BRICS, B-R-I-C-S, in which Russia is leading a group of 5 countries: Russia, China, India, South Africa, and Brazil, to establish an alternative monetary system that would seek to get out of the clutches of the IMF and the monetary system based on from the Western world. That is the first challenge. That's the most important one of all. That's the one they want to wage war over. Russia has slapped them on their faces over homosexuality. The Western world is now moving towards an agenda in which increasingly governments are declaring that it is halal for a man to marry another man and get a marriage certificate. And tomorrow, non-European countries also are going to be forced to submit. They have the Gay and Lesbian Rights Day parade every year. In Manhattan, it's a huge thing. Russia has enacted legislation prohibiting homosexuality in Russia. This is the Russian Orthodox Church raising its standard of revolt against Western Christianity. We don't have the time to go to Crimea. We don't have the time. But if you go to the internet, you will find my lectures on the subject. Russia has just delivered to the Zionist world the most significant setback they have ever experienced since the Zionist movement was created in 1897. And that was the loss of Crimea. Crimea returned to Russia. So Russia gave them a slap on the face in Crimea. They didn't like it at all. And now Russia is winning in Ukraine as well, paying them back in their own coins. So they are up in arms against Russia. They're not accustomed to anyone treating them like this. And it is inevitable that they're eventually going to have to wage nuclear war with Russia. It doesn't matter whether it's Putin or anybody else. It is the Russian people. They all support Putin. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. My name is Yusuf, Sheikh. I would just like to ask, based on your lectures, you have said a lot of times that Russia should be considered as the ally of the Muslims. My question is, how about the Shia Muslims? Should we consider them as an ally or a friend, or should we consider them as an enemy? Because based on my little research that I've done, most of the Sunni scholars have considered the Shia sect as kafirs. So can you please elaborate on that?
I am Sunni. I had a great Sunni scholar as my teacher. He had a very great Sunni scholar as his teacher. We never spoke about Shia as kafirs, kuffar. So I don't think it's right for you to say that's the way the Sunni world operated. If the Sunni world considered the Shia to be kuffar, then can you answer me? How do you explain that for more than 1,000 years of our history, no matter who ruled over the Hajj, the Shia were never prohibited from performing the Hajj? How can you say that the Shia are kuffar and you have never done anything to prevent them from performing the Hajj? You've never raised your voice to say they should not perform the Hajj. You've never demonstrated on the streets to say they should not perform the Hajj. Where is your fatwa of kufr? It's a joke. It's a joke. The Hajj is coming. Nobody is protesting anywhere on the face of the earth about the Hajj, Shia performing the Hajj, and yet fatwa of kufr. It's a joke. No. Those who want to consider the Shia to be kuffar, that's their choice. We say no. For a fatwa of kufr to have validity, it must have ijma'ul ummah. And we've never had ijma'ul ummah. No. I went to Iran for the first time last year, and I engaged with the ulama. There was one session, about 40 of them, and they were all scholars of ilmu akhirul zaman, all of them. And while we did differ with each other, I tell you, it was a very respectful discussion and a very friendly discussion. And at the end of it all, we remain as brothers. That's how it happened in Iran, okay? It is something strange to me that Iran is the one which is maintaining closer ties with Russia and with Eastern Europe, with Rome, whereas the Sunnis are beating the drums of war against Russia and against Rome. The last one, the last drum being beaten is the Hagia Sophia Cathedral. Hagia Sophia in Constantinople is the most important cathedral built by Orthodox Christians. It functioned as a major cathedral for 1,000 years before the Ottomans conquered Constantinople. And when Sultan Muhammad Fatih conquered Constantinople in 1452, the first thing he did, to the eternal shame and disgrace of this ummah, and I choose my words with great care. I have to answer on Judgment Day for every word that comes out of my mouth, in public like this. It was manifestly shameful, disgraceful, and sinful on the part of the Ottoman Sultan to take the greatest cathedral of Orthodox Christianity and convert it into a masjid. Shame on him. If no one else will say it, I will say it. Shame on him. That's not Islam. And on that day when we conquer Constantinople, inshallah, in future, we'll return that cathedral to the Christians. We'll offer an apology to them for what we did. And we will restore the name of Constantinople to the city, because that's the name that Nabi Muhammad ﷺ gave to the city. I hope and pray that Sunni Islamic scholarship might recognize that the alliance which is to come is going to be with Rome, and that Rome is today led by Russia. And Russia is returning, leaving communism and returning to Orthodox Christianity. Yeah.
Due to time constraint, we will only allow one last question. The lady on the left.
Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum, Sheikh. This is such an honor for me because the first time I saw in KL, so this is the second time I meet you here. I have one question. Libya is in the current state because Muammar Gaddafi was also intended to introduce the dinar in the oil trading. Can you comment on this? Thank you.
I have to confess that I was not aware of the Libyan government's intention of introducing a gold-backed monetary system for Africa. I was not aware of this, okay? And most certainly, this would be one of the reasons why they wanted to get rid of Muammar Gaddafi. As soon as they got rid of Muammar Gaddafi, Libya went back into their arms. Number two, Libya had taken all her gold out of the IMF. And Libya had kept all her gold within Libyan territory, which is something they don't want. They don't like that at all. But more importantly, if Dajjal is to rule over the Holy Land and convince the Jews that he is indeed the true Messiah, then the state of Israel will have to expand its territory to encompass the biblical, and you'll find it in this book. The Holy Land are false. The biblical frontiers of the Holy Land are from the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates. And so the Holy Land includes the eastern delta of Egypt, from the river Nile to the Red Sea. That's called the eastern delta. Unless Israel takes physical control of that territory, no one will accept Dajjal as the Messiah. So Israel has to wage a war of territorial expansion, which will come this side to take the eastern delta. It is in planning for that war that NATO has installed herself in Libya, so that when the attack on Egypt takes place, Israel will attack from the east and NATO will attack from the west. They will be bombarded from the Mediterranean Sea with the naval power, and you now have southern Sudan as an Israeli state. They broke away southern Sudan from northern Sudan, and southern Sudan is in the hands of the Israelis. So Egypt would be sandwiched in between, and there hardly be any hope for Egypt. It is again to our everlasting shame and disgrace that Muslims allow themselves to be duped, as they're being duped in northern Iraq now, this so-called ISIS, taking weapons from you know who, the Santa Claus. Santa Claus gave them weapons to fight the bogus jihad in Libya. Santa Claus gave them weapons to fight the bogus jihad in Syria. And Santa Claus is giving them weapons to fight the bogus jihad to create some bogus caliphate or khilafah now in northern Iraq. But not all of us are fools. They are the fools who took the weapons in Benghazi and then waged a war for the Zionists. And as a consequence of that war which they waged and overthrew the government of Gaddafi, and I am not a supporter of any government. Today, Libya is a Zionist state controlled by NATO. That's the folly we have when we have fools waging a bogus jihad.